she'll say anything. I'm like, as long as it's true. I don't always choose kindness, or at least it's not the top thing on my grocery list. There's effectiveness, there's fairness. I put a lot less stock in nice.
This is Jen Ruelens. She has been doing something in the industry that not a lot of other people are doing. She's educating. Jen runs a property management company in North Central Pennsylvania, managing over 600 doors.
Why do you think the industry has been so slow to celebrate what happens after the closing?
It's all risk. It's messy. It's unsexy. In that transaction, property managers are never invited. But in case I was invited, there'd be two people who don't get a big fat check that day. The buyer and me. We both are counting on a stream of small payments over time. That's it. That's what we get. Get rich slow. Keep your job. Don't think that this is a way out of working. I see too many people trying to do that in very short periods of time. Not grow something for 15 or 20 years. They're like, I'm going to buy 10 houses a year for the next 5 years and be cashed out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the SFR She Suite. This is the show where we pull back the curtain on women who are building, managing, and leading the future of single-family rental. I'm Tonya O'dell, your host for the SFR She Suite, and I have an amazing special guest host today, Miss Ashley Rust from Nutiliti. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Tonya. Thanks for asking me to join. I am super pumped to be here.
Yes, I am super pumped to have you, and I know the She Squad will be super pumped to have you special guest host with me today. And you guys, today we have a good one. It's a guest who's been on my radar for a hot minute. She has been doing something in the industry that not a lot of other people are doing. She's educating, she's consistent about her education, and she doesn't have an agenda. This lady is otherwise known as PM Jen. This is Jen Ruelens, you guys. Welcome to the She Suite.
Hi, She Suite or She Squad or what you're calling it. Thank you so much for having me. And I was amused as you were introducing me because you said she has no agenda, and others have said she has no direction, she has no product, and I'm like, oh, but that is probably the way I would describe it. There's no agenda with what I'm doing. I keep saying I'm in the beginning stages of a Lifetime Achievement Award, and right now it looks delusional and scattered and crazy, but it's going to get more focused as I get older for sure.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. Saying you don't have an agenda is, there's a lot to that word, right?
Yes.
A lot to that word. And I think it's important to note that it's not that you don't have motivation, that you don't have a focus. Saying that you don't have an agenda is, that's a little bit of a different animal. And what I love about your story is it doesn't seem to have started with just a brand strategy. It started with knowing your stuff and being willing to share it unapologetically in the way that you do. And that's actually the harder way to go. That's the harder path.
The first words I used to describe what I was doing with my education and the videos and putting myself out there was I called myself a real estate investor, educator, and advocate. And that is, if I could say if there's an agenda, it is to protect and empower everyday Americans in buy and hold real estate, because I am so convinced that it is the number one way for them to succeed. It's a very American thing to do. And I'm frustrated by the environment that I call them Ashley and Anthony long game or longame, like that avatar, those people, they're just so not well served right now. So the agenda I have is to get in front of as many of those people as I can and help bring them the information they need to make better decisions, work through this world better. And on the other end of that, tell this industry to get better. Get better, get more sophisticated, get more in tune with what our customers need. And I am pretty openly critical at the level of professionalism in real estate in general. And that's a wide net I'm casting. And I think everybody in the industry always nods along when I say this, But I'm aiming to not only have a better reputation as an industry, but to provide better service, be a better place to work, be a better place to hire. So that's, if there's an agenda, it's that, to advocate for that consumer.
Well, for those out there that are watching that don't know, So Jen runs One Focus Property Management, which she has actually grown into the largest property management company in North Central Pennsylvania, managing over 600 doors. And that alone, is a story of itself. But one of the big reasons that you're here today and we wanted to have you on the show is you have taken your expertise and really built a platform around it. You've got Hold It with PM Jen, you've got the podcast, it's on YouTube, it's on TikTok. You've got a reputation in the industry as someone who will tell you like exactly what you think in the best possible way. And
well, I'll say anything as long as it's true. That's what I always say. Like she hasn't. People like she'll say anything. I'm like, as long as it's true.
I always say, as long as you can always be honest if you're kind. That
yeah,
is like
and I don't always choose kindness. Or at least it's not the top thing on my grocery list. There's effectiveness. There's fairness. I put a lot less stock in nice, but that's. Well, look at y'all painting me with a nice brush. These people do need to know the truth, though.
It's an authentic brush, right?
Yeah.
And that's what, if there's one word that we keep using over and over and over on the She Suite, it's being authentic. We all have different strengths and weaknesses and personalities and all of that, but the older you get, when you learn to be your true self, whatever that looks like, obviously being respectful of some circumstances and etc. But that's what I find fascinating and interesting, about you, is that you've taken this expertise and you've wrapped it up in this. It's like a ball of curiosity. I don't know. That's how I feel.
That's how it feels.
Asheville, like from the outside looking in, like it just makes the way you present the information and your company, your persona, your brand. It's made me curious about who you are.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that it does feel curious, because that is very much my brand. Like I know what I know very well, but it's really just a small piece of the pie. And I am quite curious. And I used to worry so much more about people analyzing what I put out there and making judgments from it. And I've gotten a lot more disconnected from that and realized, no, what's important is that I'm as authentic as I can to be to myself and what I know. And that will be appealing and magnetic to the right people. It will never be the most popular channel, but it doesn't have to be. And that's why I've started calling on other property managers to join this visibility journey, because it's not just because I named myself PM Jen and I like put this investment. I don't see it as like, I do want to be famous for this. I do want to be really famous for this, but there's room for others, and there's room for other people who think differently than me, who manage differently than me, who are in different markets, who have different priorities, who do only use money as a scorecard, where I famously don't care about money like that as a scorecard. They care about people pleasing. They care about putting a different light on it. That's great. I love the diversity, particularly in our industry. Our industry are small business people. We're real estate people. We don't, at least single family home managers, we don't fit a type, in my estimation. And so what I love about that is if we all start from our different vantage points all over, our different histories, start creating content and being visible, I think that solves one of the problems where the public doesn't understand who we are, what we do, and what value we bring to the table. And they just need to see something that they align with. That's the part that I really want them to have. And if I'm it, great. But if I'm not, I want another property manager there creating content that they can resonate with.
I think what you just said, Jen, really resonates with me too. And the fact that, we got to meet each other where we're at. I think that is extremely important. We have to admit what we know, and we need to admit what we don't know.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. So when I think about, okay, you're running a property management company. When did you, I don't know if you necessarily set out to become an influencer, but you've consistently focused on educating and elevating the profession. And then, you centralize that focus around a few, different, I guess you have a few specific focuses that you educate on. When do you think you realized that your voice could or was making an impact beyond One Focus Property Management?
Right. So I've always known I was going to do something big and like mix some aspect of performing with business, like speaking. And I always have done that kind of stuff the whole way. I did case competitions in graduate school and all of that. And when I started One Focus, which was, like a third of the way into my property management journey, I used to say things like, I'm going to be a household name. I'm going to be the Susie Orman of rental real estate. And back then I pictured a CNBC show where landlords and investors called in and I helped them with the hold part of buy and hold. That's the thing that I think we don't have enough content on, that people are unprepared for, and that we can help. And I loved what Susie did in the 90s and early 2000s for women in personal finance. Just as I say, she wasn't saying anything different than anyone else. She did use her lady face, her lady words, and the way she even talked, the way she prioritized, what was it, people first, then money, then things, right? That was like her mantra. And so I always said that, but I knew I was in the early stages. I was too young. I didn't have enough experience. And then what happened was 2020, COVID happened. And I had started making some videos and doing videos because from a marketing standpoint, everybody told me that's what we needed to be doing. And it didn't cost money and I didn't have money. So that seemed like a great option for me. And then COVID happened and I started doing education on like the news items, like breaking down whatever the headline said for what you needed to understand. And the reaction to that, the trust that built, the way that started changing the relationship between me and my clients and prospective clients, when you talked to me one-on-one, you understood my expertise, and that was fine. And you gave me whatever level of respect you gave me. But for some reason, when you put yourself on the internet with a video, and these were bad videos, guys. This was not good video. I am not known for good video and audio. That is not what you're coming to PM Jen for. The way people started to respect me changed entirely, saying, I don't want to take too much of your time. Like, instead of, can you just call me, right? Just how people treated me changed. And so 2020, 2021, I went, oh, I see some power here. I see a niche. And that's when I started really just doing it with some earnest and trying to stay consistent at it.
That's awesome. It's crazy how like just a few videos can like create authority or some form of it.
Yeah, I was at a meeting with a client this morning. We're signing another couple doors for him that he hasn't given us to manage yet. And I said, do you listen to the podcast? Because he was being much more agreeable than the last time we walked properties. And he says, oh, I actually do. And I was like, I think like PM Jen has been working on you while real Jen has been sleeping.
I love that. Like, I think too, what this industry has done really well in the last few years is we're putting like actual, like, we're putting great content out. You know what I mean? It's not fluff. It's real. People like you, Jen, are forcing other PMs, investors, vendors to have real, honest conversation. We're no longer skirting around just the fluff. We're really getting into the nitty gritty of how this industry. Let me take a step back. Like, we're all getting aligned on how we want this industry to look in the future. And I think that is an incredible step that we are all taking together.
I love it. I sometimes get critical that I feel like the property management industry spends a lot of time talking to each other, right? So we create content on how to run our businesses and get more business and the trials and tribulations of running these types of businesses. And that's great. But that is training wheels territory. It doesn't need to stop, but I want to see property managers then just take the confident leap to go, I'm going to start talking to the market. I'm going to start talking to the people that hire us. I'm going to because, it is pretty nice. You get really great feedback here in the industry. We can share things that help each other, but it is harder to go out there and hit prospective clients with, I'm an expert and I'm talking about this and you don't know me from Adam. And I want to see more of that. And I see us doing it in the industry, Ashley, to your point, but we're talking to each other. And I want to see property managers start to build on that and then go out and talk more to our market.
I love that. Follow-up question, because I want to dive into the, your hold it with PM Jen. I love this because the point of the She Suite, let's talk about the unsexy stuff. Let's talk about what's messy. I want to get into it. So like the middle part, after you close, let's talk about the hold, what nobody talks about. Like again, the unsexy middle part. Why do you think the industry has been so slow to celebrate what happens after the closing?
It's all risk. Because it's all risk. It's messy, it's unsexy, and the industry, if we're going to say the real estate industry, the vast majority of us are paid at the closing table. One big sexy check. And that's lenders, that's agents, that's title companies, that's all of them. And as I like to say, in that transaction, property managers are never invited, but in case I was invited, there'd be two people who don't get a big fat check that day. The buyer and me, the property manager. And we both are counting on a stream of small payments over time. That's it. That's what we get, an expectation. And I talk about it's a lot easier to sell the spreadsheet when you're selling the spreadsheet with a beginning number and an end number. It's a lot harder to be the one who's responsible for making the numbers and all those little cells actually work. When that's shoveling snow and ice or evicting a tenant or recovering from a fire or whatever it is. And I think property managers have historically done a really poor job of this because many of us aren't very good, so we're not really in a position to say that, right? We're working on a sophistication of the market and an upgrading, and we're freaking busy. We're busy. This business, somebody calls it tasks at scale, and I really resonate with that. Unless there's only a few of us who have freed up their time enough as founders of property management companies to do what I'm doing, to hire consultants and build a studio for myself and do all these things. I've gotten some freedom in this business. I've worked through what you need to do that. And as I always say, I have no agenda, but I do have real estate and I got a reoccurring revenue business. So Hold It with PM Jen doesn't have to make money. It has to have an impact in order to be worth my time, because I'm not, unfortunately, motivated incredibly by money. I mean, I'm motivated by security. I'm motivated by freedom. I am not motivated by having the most chips in my basket when I breathe my last breath. That is not the goal. And I live where, it's a low cost of living, so it's not a lot of pressure here.
That's interesting. I'd love to dig into that real quick, Tonya. That's kind of a question, because one of the previous podcasts that I've heard you do, Jen, you talk about NOI. So how do you improve NOI for owners and make sure properties are performing at the top of their value?
Oh my God, that's my favorite thing. So I call it the stabilization plan process. And what that would mean is, so a client is either coming to me with an asset they're ready to have managed, or they're going to buy an asset and we're going to manage it. And in those scenarios, I can typically increase NOI and therefore value by about 20%. Now, this is a mix of a couple of different things. As I always say, there's a couple of, there's more than a couple, there's several levers, right? You can pull to make a property make more money or be worth more. People think it's just rent and mortgage.
Yeah.
That's it. There's so many. And I start with the definition of a stabilized property, which is it attracts and retains qualified tenants at market rent with no deferred maintenance. So when I go into an asset, let's use a double, like a 2-unit, right? So one unit's vacant, the other unit's occupied. I'm going to look at the vacant and go, all right, great. Does it have a license? Is it ready? What does it take to get it ready? What is it going to rent for? Lease it to a qualified tenant at market rent. Bing, bang, boom. Now you're stabilized. The other side, maybe it's fine, but it's probably not because I got a phone call, right? So we might have compliance issues. We might have payment or unapproved pets or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to stabilize that, whether that's taking possession back, counseling into compliance, whatever it is. I'm going to look around. I'm going to fix all the deferred maintenance. I'm going to make sure you're a legal eagle and that our properties are at market rent. So oftentimes with an occupied, we're looking at having to make an adjustment. And it could be anywhere from 30 days to a year or two after we take it over, depending on how big the building is and how long the leases were. I can move these things. So there's some obvious stuff with tenant compliance, market rents, deferred maintenance, but then we get into messing with utilities. So the one I did myself personally last August, I bought it. It's a 2-unit. It has an oil boiler that gives heat to both units. Well, that's $5,000 in oil a year. If everybody's behaving in the Middle East, right? Like right now, it's a lot worse. So I said, well, when I buy this property, I'm going to take that out, spend $20,000 to put in 2 gas units with central air, improving the value of the units, right? And now I can put the cost of that on them. And the rent didn't change that much. It went down a modicum because I'm putting the heat on them. Now they have air conditioning and it's actually quite efficient. And I took $5,000 a year expense off my bottom line. Like, that is crazy what you can do with utilities, straightening that stuff out, what you can do with pets and animals, what you can do with lease dates, what you can do with garages. I mean, it doesn't end, but it's mostly about cleaning stuff up and eliminating risk. I will tell you, most of it is this invisible, because I got you a license and I fixed that garage electric problem, you don't have that risk anymore, Mr. and Mrs., investor. Right. So that's where the 20% come from. It's a mix of the appreciation gained, the NOI change, pretty much. I don't usually mess with people's debt and equity. That's not one of the levers I pull because I'm not that person for them.
Yeah, and your message is slow wealth building. And
Get rich slow.
You say that often, but it's people have
keep
to
your job. I was just talking about that with
Yes.
a client this morning. He's doing it. He and his wife have jobs. They work. They have some investable income. They're slowly building this, but they have no aspirations for this to replace their paycheck until they're paid off and they're old. And that's how it's being timed. They're not even quite 40. And I say that, like, don't think that this is a way out of working. This is not, I see too many people trying to do that, and to do that in very short periods of time, not grow something for 15 or 20 years and then do it. They're like, I'm going to buy 10 houses a year for the next 5 years and be cashed out. And it's like, you can find lenders to mess with you at the right point in the cycle and do this kind of stuff. But ladies, I've met a lot of guys who have been on the other side of that. In fact, I just, with Justin Anderson, he wrote Funny Money, and he's the CEO, founder of Rent Smart and everything. He tells a story of, like, bigger ain't better. He was at 800 doors and he scaled down incredibly because he realized he was chasing the wrong thing. That wasn't what he wanted. He wanted the foundation, the financial foundation that real estate provided him.
I really loved what you said, Jen, that you're so thoughtful about how you're approaching, the property management piece and, again, the wealth piece. And I think just keep sharing that and it'll get out.
And I think that's why property managers need to talk, because we get it. Like, we will never stand out there and say, you have no experience and no money, get into some real estate. No, we know that does not go well for the assets, for the tenants, for the investor, for the manager. Like, we won't even take those jobs. So I want property managers out there talking more about, like, this is an amazing asset, but here's the realities. Here's how you work it so that we can be successful in this. So if more property managers told that story, because who else is going to tell the story of the hold? Yeah. Who else?
Well, and I've been a BDM for, a few different property management companies over the years. And I have always thought that that's another, aspect of a PM business where it's important that they understand what you're talking about. When somebody's out there, if it's not the owner, if it's not the property manager, whoever it is that at your company that's responsible for bringing on new business, or, that's the first point of contact for the investors, it's important that they understand, and you do such a good job. I'm sure your team is educated, but it's like, it's, if you don't understand that and someone's like, oh, they're berating you to drop the rent, not drop the rent $100 or $200 so it sits on the market for 60 or 90 days. If they don't really understand how to, correctly articulate that value of the slow hold and the ROI and all of that to your potential clients, it's, it makes it tough because generally, I feel like not all investors understand that. They might in some form or fashion, but they don't want to. Everybody wants to get it done quick, like I just want my money now, kind of
It's
mentality.
been
So
my experience that everybody claims to understand the long-term nature of real estate from an academic standpoint. Literally, people's wallets have them react differently. So if that property is asking for money and it's an inconvenient time in the investor's life, whatever expenses or income dips they're having, they get really into rationalizing how that's not needed. And that tells me they had a lack of foresight. And I use this when I'm talking to a new investor. When I'm deciding, or am I going to work with you? Is one focus going to put themselves between you and the public and say, get through me to get to him? I'm going to hold up his decisions. And I say, here's the way it might work at my house. If I woke up this morning and the shower was cold and I said, oh shoot, and the hot water heater had leaked and I need a new hot water heater. It's very possible if there weren't enough chits in my checking account, I might take cold showers for a week until I had a new paycheck. And that that's not really how I live, but like that is a very reasonable thing for a homeowner to do and choose. Fine. But the second that's a tenant, it does not matter whether your alimony was due yesterday or you got sick and didn't work last week. I need $850 to $4,000, depending on what you need. Yeah. And I need it now. And there isn't a question of, can't they just X? I say it all the time. I haven't had a doorknob on my bedroom door for years in my house. And that's a perfectly fine way for me to live. I don't need a doorknob on my bedroom door. I don't need to fix it. But the second I go to rent that house, there will be a properly installed doorknob, no matter whether I needed it or not. And that's just for some people who've not been business owners, who've not understood about customer service. It can be hard to learn those lessons when it means you have to take out the checkbook and write a check for thousands of dollars. It's not the same as running the snack stand kind of business, right? It's just bigger numbers, bigger consequences, bigger risks.
Yeah. Yes. So speaking of risk, we said, risk mitigation is a hard sell when everything's going just fine. Okay. Question for you. How do you have that conversation with a new investor before the first problem even happens?
Storytelling and walking them through examples. That's why I want to do the property visit, ideally with them. So if somebody called me up out of the blue and says, hey, I'm buying the 4-unit in your town and I want you to manage it. If they're not going to come in and walk it together with me, I'm very suspect. Now, why? I need that experience where our eyes are looking at the same thing at the same time and having an exchange. I don't know. I mean, you clearly, Tonya, have walked doors. I don't know if you've done any kind of BDM work, Ashley, with like prospective management clients, but that moment when we're standing in the same space, smelling the same thing, being confronted with the same irritated person, those are the moments where I feel like I can get them as close as possible to what's going to be expected. And then I take it a step further and I write a stabilization plan. And property managers love this. They're always emailing me, asking me for this, but I'll do that visit. I'll see, okay, like the example I'll give you today. The client took me to a 2-unit. One's occupied and one's about to be occupied. He actually already has it leased. I'm going to write up for him where that market rent needs to be, my plan to get it there, any deferred maintenance to get it taken care of, and that is informing him, yeah, she means it. She's going to take the satellite off the side of that building. She's going to put keyless locks on. She's going to inspect the boiler, and I make them sign it. So for new investors, it's probably mostly about that in-person experience, me talking them through it, then putting it in writing. And then my team is just like really diligent. And we only sign at this point month-to-month contracts because if we have a non-compliant client, we don't want to be holding on to them. Of course, it's a guarantee to the client that we're earning their business, that you can cancel us at any time. But truly, that guarantee has existed for our convenience for the time we've had it.
I will say, Ashley and I know a little bit about the utility aspect or the risk mitigation aspect, wink, wink, of, helping you protect that ROI for your new investors. Because it's really, really important. And I feel like, it's not just in the crisis moments when it's like, oh, the hot water heater went out and this is what I need you to do today. It's in those quiet moments too, that you're sharing that information and educating that investor when everything's okay so that they know what to expect when, it reminds me of the pregnancy book, what to expect when expecting or whatever.
Yes.
It's they have to know if you're an educator. I do think it's important to constantly educate, not just wait until, they've got to replace the HVAC for 12 grand.
Oh, absolutely. And we are working on that with clients and making sure they're learning from others' experiences. That's what the podcast is about, the newsletters and the classes that I run. It's all about providing for those who want it more. And I find a lot of I thought my clients wouldn't be so into it. I'm like, they have us. Like, it is pretty passive, but they seem very interested to know our point of view on things.
Yeah. And Jen, you mentioned you do the stabilization report, which is great. Could you be more specific? Like, what should investors actually be looking for that they're not?
When they look to buy a property?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Wow. So I've been teaching. I did a speaking tour last year, and it was all around due diligence tips. So specifically when you're buying occupied residential properties. So what should you be looking for that you're not? One, tenant compliance. How are they keeping the units? Are they smoking inside? Does it look like the people on the lease are living there, or more or less? Are there animals in there that aren't on the lease? Are they cutting the lawn? Is the housekeeping fine? Are the smoke detectors down? Are they blocking the hallway with 14 bikes? I mean, we've all seen all the things. Be much more understanding that you're buying that problem. Like, it's okay. It's okay to buy a property with compliance issues. What's not okay is to just accept them as what you have to bear and deal with. Instead, I think you should be more willing to kind of bite the bullet and do those things off the front end. Consumers, buyers are not talking about utilities. They're not being critical of shared utilities when they shouldn't be shared. Extension cords, just like running from unit to unit, from garages to basements. I see that kind of stuff. City licenses. Wowee zowie. People do not have city or municipality rental licenses, and this varies by region, how intrusive these are, but they're buying properties without them and figuring because nobody showed up at their door and went knock knock, you need this, that they're excused. You're not excused. Your job is to go find out if you need to have one of those. Oh, let's see. Oh, I got another big one. They are not being critical enough of the documents they're receiving during the due diligence period. And in fact, some of these ding-dongs are waiting until closing to ever see a lease. Now, why is this a problem? Well, that lease is, of course, your business. So if it's not signed, if it's not enforceable, if it's not legible, if it's not present, you're screwed. And you should have had time to do an estoppel agreement. You should have had time to adjust the sales price, whatever. No lead paint disclosures, not even caring. Now, I'm in a community where very few of ours are post 78, so that's just something we're dealing a lot with. And listen, this is legality stuff, this is experience stuff, and we're not out there talking about it, except for me. I make whole big boring presentations about it. It's not boring because it's always colorful, the stories we talk about, but I don't find realtors, at least in my market, are properly advising the investor on those aspects of the due diligence. They're doing casual verbal agreements during showings, like literally with a realtor. The tenant goes, are you buying this place, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer? And they go, yeah, maybe. And they go, I just can't pay any more rent. And then realtors and buyers are saying don't worry, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then I come in, the hired manager, and I hear that 6 weeks ago you promised these people you wouldn't change a thing when you just had to shut
You're the Wicked Witch of the West, and you didn't, you didn't even ask to be.
It's like you make money.
Devil horns.
Oh my God, Ashley and Tonya, you know the feeling then. And they're like, well, I can't do that. And I go, why would you have handicapped yourself? And why would that realtor would not have done what I do before I walk into properties with clients and go, hey, listen, shut the fuck up. Say nothing. You're the buyer's rep.
She wants that big check at closing like you were talking about earlier.
See, now you made me hit my desk and get all excited. Yes, that person is properly motivated to do exactly what you hired them to do, which is to execute a transaction.
Yep.
Which is why if your real estate representative, the one who helps you in those transactions, is not investor minded, is not willing to tell you they're not going to take you to something that isn't right for you, they aren't willing to set boundaries, then they're not worth it. Then they're not supplying you with any kind of, right? And is it
How
hard to
set up
find
for
property?
success? That's to me that you want to be set up for success from the beginning. You need to know everything about this property, to your point. Like,
But
yeah.
if I sell properties and I don't care and I bring you, you say, I want X, Y, and Z, and you think X, Y, and Z is at 100 Main Street and I sell you 100 Main Street. Here's the truth. I don't lose business when you fail. I get to sell it for you in 3 years. Don't I? Don't you call me back?
Yeah.
And I think that's criminal. I think those are the statistics that should be published. And if I was an investor agent, I would publish like my clients buy and did this with them. Like they held it this long, they made this much money together with my advice and searching or whatever. But I famously don't sell properties. It's like one of the reasons I don't have as much money as people think I should is because I don't participate in that. I have such a bad opinion of how that business is done. I don't agree with the co-broke system of commissions. By the way, neither does the DOJ anymore. Hint, hint, people, get the freak together. But, okay, I know people who sell houses listen to this and they don't want to feel attacked, but the DOJ and the consumer is telling you that it's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, and it is because, to your point, and I think of, maybe you have a single parent out there that's, they're a real estate agent, and yeah, they are motivated by that transaction, right? It's how they eat, sleep, provide for their kids, the whole 9 yards, but it should be set up differently for them so they don't feel like they have to push things under the rug or cover this up or that up in order to feed their family. Like,
yeah.
I don't. If it were different from the top down, then the execution could be different.
I don't think consumers understand that when they're engaging in investment, real estate, there's a different assumption that these systems, the banking systems, the real estate systems, all assume that you're an educated, savvy person. There's different rules for different things. People don't know this. In fact, I'll tell you guys a story. I dabbled with the idea of opening a brokerage at one point. I was so frustrated with how investors, and I still freaking dabble with the idea, but here's what. I don't want to participate in the MLS. I don't want to do a co-broke commission system. It would be just services for investors on investment property. And I called the attorneys, like the biggest ones in the state that do all the stuff. And I said, listen, this is what I'm dreaming of. Poke the holes in it. Tell me where I'm not going to go right. And he's like, you really can't mess with any single family. Because if it's a single family, it's assumed that the buyer on that is going to be a consumer versus an investor. And by working off market and keeping things off market, that could really be viewed as predatory. And I was like, all right. And, I still, haven't done it. But I just don't think when, two teachers who have their private home and have maybe done the business with buying and selling the home that they live in, they get a little cheddar together, they start listening to Hold It with PM Jen and go, that's it. This is the year we buy one. I don't think they realize when they approach a real estate agent and a banker and all this that they're kind of in a different bucket now, and there aren't as many guardrails on that bucket. There is an assumption that you know what you're doing and that you know what risks you're taking and that you're responsible for that. That's something I don't think consumers get.
No, but I want to, from your point of view with these conferences, and I know there's a lot of chatter around it because I've been talking about this particular aspect for a while now. As a service provider, I know me personally, I've been saying, how can I get out from behind this booth and have real conversations with people that matter? And I know Ashley and I have talked about this. I've talked about this with other people. And so from your point of view, as a speaker, people approach you maybe with a different pitch than they do, if you're, one representing one focus and, Ashley and I or somebody want to have a conversation with you, right? What do you, tell us, what you think, service providers, I hate to call them vendors, they're the service providers, service providers can do, how can the conference be better, right? How can both people succeed, and what do you think? What's your opinion on that, basically? That was a long-winded question.
Right. I mean, and from my experience, I can tell you, I started, when you're new, at least I'll speak from the NARPM viewpoint, right? For single family, residential property managers out there. NARPM's probably your shows of choice, and there's 2 big ones a year. And when I was newer in owning this business, and I used to do IRA when I was in multifamily, and it was great. I liked it, but of course that is not for the single family folks. I wasn't getting the value there, so I made the move to NARPM. And when you're new, it's like Ashley, like what you kind of talked about, drinking from the fire hose. It was very exciting. So if you're new to NARPM, if you're new to owning your company, I think that's your job, is to drink from the fire hose. What is available here? What are the resources? What do I need? And I know in the beginning I used to go to these conferences and conventions with like, I'm solving a problem, or I'm making progress on a problem with this one, with this visit. Now, as I've grown, my experience with this is as my visibility has grown, of course, there's a lot more people who want to interact with me, and I get a lot choosier. So one thing about being public as a single family home manager is I'm always talking about what I want, the problems, and then people are reaching out to me. So I'm getting invites, I'm getting asked to do things, and that has made that travel, those times, so much more valuable to me, because I get to meet people and build relationships and work on these problems. So like anything, it's about leading with value. And if you have so if I'm a single family home manager, an SFR person, I'm building my personal platform. I'm out there telling people who I am, that I'm going to be places, so that, now listen, you have to deal through the fluff, because if I put it out there and Tonya and Ashley and Tracy all find me, right? And Tanya's got exactly what I'm looking for. Ashley has something I might consider, I don't know, whatever. And Tracy has something I don't care about. I have to be disciplined and going, no, we'll see about Ashley, but I'm going to make sure I hold Monday afternoon at 5 to have coffee with Tonya. And I've gotten really ruthless about this, like 2 weeks out before, like invites start coming in about a month before the event. And then about 2 weeks before, I want to make sure if there's any holes, I've filled them strategically. I've reached out. So I'm looking just as much as the vendors are looking at what property managers are going to be there. I'm looking who's going to be there. Now, listen, I'm working on, it's not like I'm just signing up for demos at this point. I'm working with people in the space to build partnerships, to build initiatives. And so that face-to-face is really important. I don't know what to say about the vendors, except that, you know, I love when I put what I care about out there and they come back to me with like a response that shows they share that value. I'm so much more likely to spend time listening to them or help them. And probably the thing I would say is, if you have that connection with somebody as like a service provider to a property manager, ask the property manager who they should be talking to, because we are giving that way. I'm not scared to tell you, you should talk to my friend in Philly and give them this Cracker Jack solution too. I have not found that to be the case among us, that we care to keep things secret like that.
I love what you just said about, service providers. So I'm curious, and I really would love a very honest opinion. So service providers out there, hope everybody's listening to this, because obviously when Jen speaks, we need to listen. What are vendors getting wrong at these events? Like, what makes you walk away from a conversation?
So the top thing is just demonstrating you have no idea what my life is like. So when a service provider comes, they're often trying to immediately suss my need and solve the problem, right? And we all have, utilities. Utilities suck. They're the hardest, well, they're not the hardest, but they're among the hardest parts of this business. So it's fair to say when you approach a property manager, they probably have some sweat and some grief around your area of expertise. But when a proposal is put to me without understanding my life and my challenges, and that can show up, my oldest gripe in the book was cold calls during rent week. And anytime it happened, I would school whoever called me. Now I'm better at keeping those calls away. But if you're a property manager and you're still in the thick of it, rent week is hard. That's when leases, people move in, people move out. Rent's due, people need customer service, you're getting new work orders. Everything happens that first week. And it's only been the last couple of years I've taken vacation freedom in the first week of the month. And that's not same for everybody in this business. And so when that cold call or that expectation, or they want to try to schedule something with you, I think that is something that just shows a naiveness. I get very critical when the solution doesn't line up with the lived experience. And this could go into the one thing I know we wanted to talk about, which was safety. And just down to like, when I talk to prop tech people, and not all service providers are prop tech, but prop tech, the blue vest guys really get this one good, and not in a good way. They love to lead with how they are going to solve this and do this. And anytime you bring up a real consideration, well, it's 50 miles between properties, or I can't send a leasing agent in the dark to do this, or this isn't how it really works. They gloss over it because they don't understand. And I can immediately tell when somebody's like been in a maintenance truck for a day and done a shift running work orders. I can tell when you've done a week leasing and you've met 40 people and been stood up on the porch 15 times. Like, that is a different level of recognition. And if I ran a service provider company, all of my marketing would be about how my team has experience on properties. Maybe they haven't worked there. Maybe I didn't recruit them off there, but I send them out there. I say, hey, Jen, at One Focus, I know you've got a dozen fleet vehicles running around central Pennsylvania. Can I fly 3 people out and, I don't know, put them in your cars for a day and let them shadow your people? Get on out here. Do you know how much more patience I would have with you if you showed that level of care and getting to know what my business is like? Not just my business. What are property management businesses like? So that is what service providers could do better, is just have a little bit more experience with the lived experience of the property manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great response, and I think it's something that, everyone should know. I think the service provider side of SFR has evolved over the last, in my 17 years here, and it's not, when I first started, it was literally rentals.com, and people signed a contract at the booth, right? Like back in 2009. Like, maybe someone does that now, but like, that is not by any means even close to an expectation of mine per se, like, anymore. It's about how can we put ourselves in a position to have those meaningful conversations. It's just something that's been on my mind for a bit, as I see like comments on LinkedIn where people say they turn their badge around when they walk through the vendor hall and stuff like that. And so rather than let that upset me or feel slighted by that, I'm trying to put effort into understanding and making adjustments, right? So we can meet and have those conversations, and someone doesn't feel like they're walking to the dreaded vendor hall, or
I know.
So that's the point.
I've never felt that way. I really haven't. I think that's different about our NARPM events sometimes than other events. I know service providers have shared with me the vibe is a little bit more like the attendees feel like they really don't want to be sold. And if I could align to anything to that, it's that when you control the spend on, 600 doors like I do, you're being sold a lot. You're being sold to a lot, and I not only have the responsibility for controlling my spend, but the spend of my clients. So we're cautious, we're conscientious, and also we're out of our depth. In that room, those are like, we're not big business people, we're small business people. And that is probably why you're seeing that reaction of, I'm having fear, I want to be invisible, I want to consume this at my comfort level, not yours, booth person. That is probably what I would shed some light on. But to break through, it's the relationships. I've been to those rooms for 10 years, and you see some of the service providers having these close relationships. It's service, it's leading with value, it's participating in the organization, it's those things. That's what they're doing to figure it out. Like, they might not put people in cars and run them around and job shadow, but they participate in NARPM. They learn what we care about by working on committees with us and build those relationships. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that's what's special about our industry. I mean, I was at a dinner at NARPM Broker Owner with one of our PMs that we manage utilities for, and the CEO sat next to me and he was like, Ashley, literally, he's like, we want to work with service providers who are partners. I say that at Nutiliti when we bring on a new PM. I'm like, look, this is a partnership. We want to grow with you. We want to truly understand your business and your day to day, because I know then that we can bring more value to not only the PM, but to your point, your investors as well. So since again we're gearing up into the conference season 2026, no sleep for us three until January 2027. Like what is your advice for making it count? We all know we have, let's say average conference is 2 days. Everybody is so squirrel brained. I use the joke, I'm a conference butterfly. I'm trying to have the personal touch points with the friendships that I have. I'm also trying to meet new people, so like what is your advice for that's just more than going to the parties and going to the booths? Like what's kind of your playbook for these conferences to get the most value out of it?
One, clear the schedule. So do not be that person who is emailing owners and tenants from the table. So whatever you can do, and if maybe you can only get one full day off, then that's your conference day. So I think as much as possible, do not think you're going to like work. I hear people going like, oh, I have to like, like a really routine thing they have to like step out of things and go do. And I'm like, oh, I would love to see you like clear that schedule. I'd love to see you have a plan. So when I was younger in the business and in NARPA, my plan looked like knowing the schedule, knew which sessions were must-haves for me. I would sometimes even look up the speakers in advance to make decisions about who I was going to go see. And then that vendor hall, I would again have like a hit list of I'm going to meet and I am going to assess, like I would do all my shopping at those shows. It didn't mean I only considered people at those shows, but those people had a lot better chance of getting my business because I could have that conversation, have that feeling, and then go from there. Now that I'm more experienced and I'm doing different things, it's much more about the hallway convention. So I am planning, I call it my dance card. So my dinners, my coffees, like I'm not in as many of the sessions. I'm making appearances. I'm doing things that way. I'm making sure I'm glad handing some people because now those vendors are my prey. I go ask them for big checks to sponsor things.
Yeah.
So, like those rooms, if you're working with NARPM on things, if you're working with your chapter or with Women's Council or all the various things I've worked for, those service partners want to build that relationship, property manager. So take the thing you care about and walk around and talk about it with them and see what progress you can make. We brought it up already, but we should talk about safety and the progress on
I know.
making this
I was getting ready
exactly
to
this way.
pivot a little bit because I really wanted to hear more about like as a leader in a female leader in SFR, like what conversations really do you want to have more openly? And I know you and I've talked a little bit about the safety precautions of particularly women that are, working for the property management companies and kind of what they go through on a day-to-day basis. And so I wanted you to touch on some of that for the viewers because it really, I've been there and it is very, very important. And I feel like it's something that people don't really talk about.
We do not talk at all about how our job is to get calls from strangers who found us, sometimes by a photo ad, because of course in real estate we always use our pictures, and they said, hey, come to this vacant property or to this other stranger's house and meet me there. And I go, great, give me 20 minutes, right? Like, I just need to grab a slushie. That's the only concern I have. I'm meeting you anywhere, and I'm sending my maintenance techs into strangers' homes every day to do things. I'm sending my leasing agents, my property managers, my inspectors. And we just can never forget that this is an incredibly dangerous job. And the way the story goes, I just put this on LinkedIn and it got a lot of attention, but I said it was about 2018, 2019. And I was using one of the syndicators to do the leasing, right? You put the ad in, it syndicates out to a bunch, it helps you do the shelf showing, the whole thing. I was with the one, and I walk up to the CEO at the vendor hall at, I guess it was like broker owner or whatever in San Diego, and I said, hey, now that you are working on an app according to what you said, and we have geolocation, this is my idea. I said, that app knows where the leasing agent's supposed to be. The phone knows where the leasing agent is. Can we get something built in there that would notify the supervisor or me to say, hey, leasing agent is not on track. There's an abnormality here. They're either at this location too long or they haven't arrived, right? To maintain customer service, but also to maintain the whereabouts on my people. So I know my big thing was if you went out for an 11 o'clock tour and I'm used to you running around town all day, it could be 5 o'clock and I go, has anybody seen them? since 11, and I'm the one who's going to have to call your husband or wife and explain what happened. And I wanted better. And I said, one other thing I want, while you're putting all this in, is when they're outside the safety of the office and they're clocked in, I want them on some, like every 20 minutes, to get a, like, prove that you're okay. Put in your 4-digit PIN, answer a secret question, put your thumbprint, whatever it is. And that would help keep the one, I'm getting real-time checks. You're cool, right? You didn't answer for 10 minutes. Woo, woo, woo. Now I know I have a problem and I should be doing something here from the home base. And that is telling that leasing agent or property inspector, whoever, you're doing a dangerous job, stay mindful. You're doing a dangerous job. You don't know if the next property you walk into is going to have a squatter, is going to have somebody you're expecting, but they're high on drugs or mentally deranged or just classically pissed at us. We get people pissed at us. And that's it. I'm sending an employee in who has told this family they have to get rid of their dog and stop smoking inside and clean up the front porch. That could be a dangerous situation. And the way that experience went when I told that male CEO that I wanted this was they immediately said we needed to stop doing in-person showings and just do self-showings. And I said, that's not going to work for us. I would like you to consider what I suggested. And he said no. And he said, people won't pay for it, and that's it. And I turned around. I say I walked right to the next table. I think I probably did a lap. And then I went to their competitor's table and I signed a contract. You say people don't sign at tables? That was the only one I ever signed at a table. And I walked over to that CEO and I said, we're done. We're done. Goodbye. I'll be spending the next month now figuring out. And by the way, the other company didn't listen to me anymore and didn't give me what I wanted. So for the last 8 years, anytime I could get anyone in prop tech, I gave them that pitch that I just said, what I want, why I want it. And listen, I just get, oh, that's nice. Have my koozie, my pen. Bye. Until I met, and I should tell you, at Capital Summit, I met a salesperson for property tech. And he, not a classic feminist, not a classic person who would take me seriously. I did not give him that much credence, I'll be honest. But at the next event where I was, he made sure I was at dinner with Vanessa Anderson, the CEO of Property Tech, who within 2 weeks had me on with 2 lead developers at her company. I've attracted attention with that LinkedIn profile. I have a former president of NARPM who is quietly engaging with me and Vanessa on this because they're also very passionate and they're just not a show pony like me out there. And I am so glad that they think that they can make some pushes. And that LinkedIn post has another, I'm not going to say who, but they have been in development on a product that would essentially do what I'm asking for the industry. This would be a fairly new entrant coming out with something pretty revolutionary. And I was really happy to, in a sense, kind of consult for them and tell them my opinion. And as always, by the way, if you're out there working on a safety solution in property management, you can contact me, Jen, at One Focus PM, and I'll talk to you. If there's a way for me to lend my company as a resource to figure this out, I'll do that. Please build it, and stop believing that we won't pay for it. We will.
Well, I've been thinking about it ever since I know I've had a couple of personal experiences, even with a sovereign citizen. That was scary. But anyway, but I've been thinking about this ever since you and I had the conversation. And I even found myself making some notes. If they do this with Uber, somebody should be able to do this within the property management industry. But Vanessa was somebody that was on my radar to bring it up with. So, whether it's her, whether it's somebody else, or it's a couple of people with varying platforms or whatever, I feel like it's, we've been around prop tech for a minute, and like I said about Uber, it's possible to do this. So having it available to people in our industry would be, I think it would be game changing, and I think it would be, self showings, I think that's a great concept. That's a great, avenue and option for a lot of companies. And, there's an element of safety there that maybe is not there when you just go and show a property, but it's not foolproof by any means. And we all know that.
No, and that's not the only time we're together in these properties.
Right.
BDMs are doing it, inspectors, techs, managers, all happening. It's all out there. And, You know, I was saying I want property tech people to do the job a little bit, to like be with us. It's funny when I go into properties with investors, you can tell the ones that are comfortable with this and the ones who aren't. And I often talk about, like sometimes you have, like, so I walk into a unit, I don't care if it's mine or not, I'm like no closed doors, we're coming in. I walk around, shoulders up, chin up, like I'm brave. Even if it's fully nuts what's happening in there, because that's a survival skill, right? Like I'm going to be in control of this situation. And I have had very wealthy investors who go on this with me because I insist on it, and they get inside the door and they hide. They literally will cower. They'll cast their eyes down and they'll kind of put their arms in front of them and make themselves small. And I have even had to say, there was this one, he was a physician, and he was doing this with me, and we got out of the unit and I said, "Hey doc, you all right?" He's like, and I go, "Well, you're acting scared. So if you can't act scared, like you got to get out. Like you're not helping. So you can't cower. You don't have to barge around like me, but you can't cower." And I said, and I get it, man, because if I was in your job in the exam room and somebody came in and like took off their pants to show me whatever was going on, I too would get against the wall and act like I couldn't see. But you see how that wouldn't work in that professional situation? That's the same thing that's happening here. And I think if I could put that male CEO who was so rude to me in a car and go inspect that unit or build me a safety feature. And he literally had to take the key out and go into and knock and see who's there. I think they might feel a little different.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And we could keep going on and on about this, but we're about to have to wrap up time-wise. So I always ask from the She Suite lens, right? So we always asked our guests this. So in 5 years from now, and unfortunately we have to be a little bit brief, in 5 years from now, what conversation do you hope the industry is having that we're not having enough of today? Whether it has anything to do with something we've talked about or not, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I want to see more use of the industry's data toward driving performance on our properties. So I want to see, like, we've done a great job of standardizing some data from a performance of our company's standpoint. But now that we're collecting data and using data, and this is something I want to see NARPM do more of, I want to understand what sort of KPIs we can push as an industry. So how do I get utilities to be a lower percentage of rent for an expense? How do I get turn times down? How do I cut days on market? It's surprising to me when I go to these events and so much is only about how we run our companies and make more money. And I kind of want to where's the conference that tells me how to be a better property manager? Not a more profitable property manager, not a larger property manager, but the one with the lowest days on market or the best turns, the best budgeting, the best problem solving. And that is what I'm so into. I mean, it's all the basics of the hold. So there you go. The voice of the hold tells you in 5 years, you all will have realized that I'm right, and that the voice of the hold says we got to focus on the hold and what it takes to actually last through several cycles, good times and bad.
Well, you heard it right here from PM Jen, you guys. Thank you, Jen, for being exactly who you are on and off camera. The industry is better for it. And to everyone watching and listening, share this one, you guys. There's someone in your network that needs to hear it. Thank you so much, Jen, for coming on with us. Thank you, my dear friend Ashley Rust, for co-hosting with me today. And thank you, everybody out there who's tuning in for the She Suite. This was an awesome episode, and we will see you soon. She Suite is obviously brought to you by Ever Resi Media, who we love.